Hello and welcome back to The Brompton Guy. In today's episode, we're going to talk about performance tyres. As you all know, I've been using the Kojak ever since I've been a Brompton owner, but has the successor of the Schwalbe one made it a better performance tyre? These two are going head to head so we can figure out which one takes the crown. Now sit back, relax, and cue the intro.
He's the Brompton Guy!
Brompton Performance Tyres. When we think of performance, we think of one name, and that is Schwalbe. Schwalbe have always been there for Bromptons, and they made that mark really obvious in 2018 when they released the Schwalbe Kojak on the Chapter 3 version 1. This was an all-out performance tyre and had one of the lowest rolling resistance that was ever seen on Brompton. Roll forward a year and we have the release of the Chapter 3 version 2, which then introduced what I'm holding here, the Schwalbe one, which is still manufactured and made today. Now the Kojak only had that 1 year in before it was discontinued itself, but had this tyre actually made such a big jump that it had to be discontinued? And what were the differences between the tyres? And if you could pick one today in 2024, which one should you pick? I'm hoping to break that down a little bit now because I have been a Kojak user for at least a year now and I've already put 2,800 kilometers in the set of Kojaks I had. Before I go into the details of this video, I would like to quickly say that these tyres have been provided to me by Schwalbe. It was the tyre I opted for and picked for my upcoming dragon ride, which is happening this Sunday. It sees me going through the Brecon Beacons, trying to cover 100 miles on some of the hilliest terrain possible in the area. So stay tuned to see an upcoming video of that coming shortly. But now, let's dive into the difference between the Schwalbe one and the Schwalbe Kojak. Let's do it. So with performance tyres, one of the big questions we have to have is the weight. If we're going for performance, weight is going to be a factor. And I can tell you that the Kojak weighs in at 185 grams, while the Schwalbe one weighs in at 175 grams. So this gets a slight advantage when we're looking at the weight penalties of the wheel. Another noticeable difference with these is that the Kojak has a tyre pressure of 70 to 115 psi. This can go absolutely rock hard, while the Schwalbe one has a 60 to 100 psi limit. So if you prefer to have harder tyres, then you're actually going to be looking at the Kojak for your advantage there. Now both tyres themselves have limited puncture protection. I believe the actual one has a little bit better puncture protection, but over all the distance I've had absolutely no issues with the Kojak. Now I have seen people saying that they are more puncture prone, and that is obviously true in comparison to something the marathon or the marathon races, but all those miles I've never had an issue. Yes, I've got a couple of scores and scratches and nick in the tyre itself, but I would pretty much expect that for any tyre I've done over 280,000 kilometers in. The other thing to notice is that with the Kojak, it's not rotational at all. It doesn't matter which way you fit the tyre, it doesn't have any tread pattern. Whereas the one comes with a slight tread on it, which should help you have a little better traction compared to the Kojak, but does mean you need to be aware when you are refitting the tyre if you do get a puncture, because you don't want to fit it the opposite way than what the rotation is advertising. One of the other differences that I have noticed on this from the general feel is that I personally feel that the Kojak is actually thicker all round, especially through the very tip of it, than what the Schwalbe one is. It feels significantly thinner and it doesn't have a build-up of material like the one. It makes me feel that this, even though on paper this should be more puncture resistant, this probably has the advantage and just genuinely feels it could take much more of a beating from the roads. When I'm feeling these side by side here, this does make me a little nervous. I've not done any miles in them yet, but I could see myself being more liable to get a puncture in this than what I would in that, just by the thickness of the rubber itself. Another small difference that doesn't affect performance at all is that the tan itself is completely inside the Schwalbe one, while the tan on here is only outside of the Kojak, and we have a black inner itself on there. Again, small, but just a noticeable cosmetic difference. When you do have both of these in hand, it does feel noticeably lighter, and I do think that's probably because of the thinner material what these are made with. Now, would I take one over the other? Yes, this is heavier, but I already know this has done the distance and time, whereas this has a lot to prove. Now, when I was given the Schwalbe ones, I did have the option to get whichever one I wanted, but I felt it was only fair to see if the new Schwalbe one can live up to the really high expectations that I have put on this tyre. While I have great fond memories of this tyre, this, I think, should hopefully do equally well, but I already have slight concerns just when I feel with it in my hand. Now, another noticeable difference is that this is ever so slightly larger than what the Kojak is. It gives you minimal ground clearance difference, but it's just worth highlighting that this is slightly larger than what the Kojak is, so if you mix and match, your bike would be ever so slightly higher depending which way you go. The other one I can't quite decide, and I don't know if you have an opinion, is that I've always really liked the look of the Schwalbe Kojak. From a tyre aesthetic point of view, I like the fact the branding's at the top and the name's at the bottom, but I also like the fact that on this, you can technically fit the tyre without worrying about which side do you want to put the valve. Obviously, when you line the valve up, it looks really good and right, whereas on here, I can do it either way and it's absolutely fine. I do also, when we're talking a cosmetic, the Kojak has what I'd call like a checkered finish around it, which I don't feel has aged that well, but I don't think tan walls ever really do, but it just gives me that go faster feel. Whereas this one has much more of a sort of line-based system, but I've got a feeling that when I clean it, it might look a little better than what the checkered finish comes up on. Now, it is early days for me with these wheels, and I will definitely give a better review and comparison when I've done similar distance to this itself. I have had absolutely no punctures with this, so this is holding an absolute staple, and to be honest, I'm not sure what the one could improve on, because even from a traction point, I've never came anywhere near off the bike, nor have I found it difficult to corner or needed extra grip on this, even in the wet condition. I purely want to try this because this is the type of tyre that the majority of you might actually buy over the Kojak, because it's not as easy to find this tyre anymore. Especially if you even look at Schwalbe's website, it's really hard to find any of these on it. You can only really go to suppliers that take them on that side there. I know it might be a basic one, but I really think putting these head to head is going to be a really good test, and I look forward to seeing my results. Obviously, if anything happens, I will give posts on my YouTube out to let you know if I get a puncture of this and to make sure it makes it around the Dragon. And with these two beautiful wheels in my hand, it's time to wrap up this video on the Schwalbe Performance tyres. I'm looking forward to see what they do over the time, and I am super grateful to Schwalbe for supplying me with these to make sure I have great success on my upcoming Dragon ride. I do have more modifications that's been done to the Brompton, and I have so much content to put out. I am just running a little bit behind because I've got a lot going on at the moment and I've got this event coming up. So please bear with me, and I will try my best to keep to my regular schedule of every week. But as always, thank you so much for your support here in the Brompton Guy. If there's anything else you want to see, as always, put it in the comments below. And thank you so much for all the feedback you've given me on my custom bike packing video. That's been amazing, and I'm happy to say that with that feedback, the bag itself is now in production. So thank you very much. Enjoy your day, night, wherever you are, and thank you for tuning in to the Brompton Guy. We'll see you later.
He's the Brompton